There is a betrayal so quiet, you don't notice it happening until it's already over. It doesn't announce itself with arguments or confrontations. It doesn't arrive with broken promises or dramatic exits. It simply exists in the spaces between words, in the silences that grow longer, in the faces that smile while hearts turn cold. You feel it before you understand it. A shift in the air, a change in temperature. The people you thought were close suddenly feel distant, and you can't quite explain why. But here's what most people never realize. That betrayal didn't begin the moment you felt it. It was always there, hiding beneath the surface, waiting for the right conditions to reveal itself. The friendship you believed in was a performance, and you were the stage. The loyalty you trusted was conditional, and the conditions have changed. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago when he wrote that men are not what they seem. They wear masks of friendship while calculating their own advantage. They speak of loyalty while measuring what they stand to gain. And the moment the scales tip, the moment you stop serving their needs, the mask begins to slip. Tonight, we're going to explore a single principle from Machiavelli's writings that, when applied just once, forces every fake friend in your life to expose themselves. You won't need to confront anyone. You won't need to accuse or argue. You simply do one thing, and human nature does the rest. The pretenders reveal themselves through their own reactions, through their own inability to sustain the illusion when it's no longer convenient. This isn't manipulation. This is simply removing the blindfold and seeing what was always there. Welcome to Noir Wisdom. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to this video. Hitting that button doesn't just support the channel, it helps us bring you more deep dives into the hidden sides of human behavior, dark psychology, and the lessons you won't hear anywhere else. And if you really want to join the conversation, turn on the notification bell so you never miss an insight that could change the way you see the world. Niccolò Machiavelli was not the villain history made him out to be. He was a diplomat, a philosopher, a man who spent his life observing power dynamics in the courts of Renaissance Italy. He watched princes rise and fall. He witnessed betrayals that destroyed kingdoms and loyalties that were nothing more than convenient arrangements. And what he learned, what he documented in his writings was this: human beings are fundamentally self-interested creatures who disguise their motives behind elaborate performances of virtue, friendship, and loyalty. This observation made him infamous. People called him cynical, manipulative, and evil. But Machiavelli wasn't teaching people how to be corrupt. He was teaching them how to see corruption clearly, how to recognize the games being played around them, how to protect themselves from those who would exploit their trust. His work was a mirror held up to human nature, and people recoiled not because the mirror lied, but because it told the truth too clearly. In his most famous work, The Prince, Machiavelli wrote extensively about loyalty, about the people who surround those in power, about the difference between genuine allegiance and opportunistic association. He understood something that most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept, that very few relationships are built on unconditional care. Most are transactional. Most are maintained because both parties are receiving something they value. And the moment that exchange becomes unbalanced, the moment one person stops providing what the other expects, the relationship begins to decay. This isn't pessimism. This is pattern recognition. And once you see the pattern, once you understand the mechanics of how false loyalty operates, you gain a power that most people never access. The power to distinguish between those who genuinely care about you and those who care about what you provide. Let's talk about loyalty, about what it actually means versus what people pretend it means. In the world of appearances, loyalty is spoken of in romantic terms. People talk about ride or die friendships, about being there through thick and thin, about unconditional support. These phrases sound beautiful, they feel meaningful, but Machiavelli would tell you to look beneath the poetry and examine the structure underneath. True loyalty, in Machiavelli's understanding, is extraordinarily rare. It exists when someone continues to stand beside you even when doing so costs them something, even when there's no benefit to be gained, even when you have nothing left to offer. True loyalty endures absence, endures silence, endures your worst moments and your seasons of struggle. It doesn't need constant reassurance or continuous reward. It simply exists because the connection itself has value beyond utility. But most of what passes for loyalty is something else entirely. It is proximity maintained by benefit. It's affection sustained by what you provide, whether that's entertainment, validation, resources, status, or simply the light you carry that makes others feel better about themselves. People orbit you not because of who you are, but because of how you make them feel, what doors you open, what advantages your presence provides. And as long as the benefits flow, the friendship appears genuine. The loyalty seems real. Machiavelli observed this pattern in every court he studied. The prince surrounded by advisors who praised him while he held power, who spoke of their unwavering devotion, who promised they would die for him. And then, the moment the prince's fortune turned, the moment he lost his position, or his wealth, or his influence, those same advisors vanished like smoke. The loyalty that seemed so solid was revealed to be nothing more than strategic positioning. They were never loyal to the man. They were loyal to what the man could do for them. This same dynamic exists in every friendship, every relationship, every social circle you're part of. People remain close as long as the equation works in their favor, as long as you're providing something they value, whether consciously or unconsciously, whether they would admit it or not. Your energy, your attention, your willingness to listen, your success that reflects well on them, and your struggles that make them feel better about their own lives. Whatever the currency is, as long as you're paying it, the relationship continues. But what happens when you stop? What happens when you withdraw the benefits, when you pull back your energy, when you're no longer available in the way you used to be? This is where the truth reveals itself. This is where Machiavelli's principle comes into sharp, undeniable focus. The action is simple, almost deceptively so. You withdraw without announcement. You stop making yourself available. You stop explaining your decisions. You stop trying to maintain relationships that require constant effort from only one side. You stop performing the role that others have become comfortable with you playing. Not in anger, not in resentment, not with any dramatic declaration. Simply in quiet, dignified absence. You don't announce that you're pulling back. You don't create conflict. You don't send messages explaining why you need space or why you're disappointed. You simply stop feeding the dynamic. You stop initiating conversations with people who never initiate with you. You stop being the one who always reaches out, always makes plans, always asks how they're doing. You stop going out of your way to be helpful, available, and present. You redirect your energy inward and observe what happens next. This is the test. This is the moment of revelation, because human nature cannot help but respond, and the response tells you everything you need to know. The ones who truly care about you will notice the shift, but they won't respond with anger or accusation. They'll reach out genuinely, asking if you're okay, making an effort to connect because they value the connection itself, not just what you provide. They'll respect your need for space while making it clear that they're still there. Their concern will feel authentic because it is. They're not worried about losing access to your resources or your attention for their own sake. They're worried about you, about your well-being, about the relationship as a whole. But the fake ones will expose themselves immediately, and they'll do it in ways that are remarkably consistent, remarkably predictable, because false loyalty follows patterns. Machiavelli documented these patterns. Modern psychology has confirmed them. And once you know what to look for, you'll see them everywhere. The first response is confusion mixed with irritation. The person who was only around for what you provided suddenly realizes that the supply has been cut off, and they don't understand why. They're not concerned about you. They're concerned about the disruption to what they were receiving. So they might send a message, casual but probing, asking where you've been, why you're distant, what's going on. But pay attention to the undertone. It's not a worry, it's inventory. They're checking to see if the resource is still available, if the connection can be reestablished on their terms. When you don't respond with the immediate availability they're accustomed to, when you don't rush to reassure them or explain yourself, the irritation begins to show. They might make passive-aggressive comments, subtle digs disguised as jokes. They might suddenly become busy themselves, mirroring your unavailability as a form of punishment. They might start talking to mutual friends, shaping a narrative that positions you as the one who changed, who became distant, who abandoned the friendship. They're crafting a story where they're the victim of your withdrawal rather than the beneficiary of your previous generosity. Some will go silent entirely. These are the ones who realize that the cost of maintaining the relationship without receiving the benefits is too high, so they simply disappear. No explanation, no closure, no acknowledgement of all the time you spent together. They ghost because their presence was never about connection. It was about transaction, and the transaction is no longer favorable. Machiavelli would tell you that this silence is actually a gift. They're removing themselves from your life and saving you the trouble of removing them yourself. Others will escalate. They'll become resentful, bitter, even hostile. This is perhaps the most revealing response because it demonstrates just how much entitlement they felt toward your energy, your time, your resources. They believed they had a right to what you were providing, and your withdrawal feels like theft to them. They might lash out, spread rumors, or try to turn others against you. They might attempt to guilt you, reminding you of past moments when they were there for you, conveniently omitting that their support was always conditional, always strategic, always calculated to maintain their access to what you provided. Watch how quickly former friends become strangers. Watch how easily affection turns to indifference or even contempt. Watch how people who claimed they'd always be there suddenly act as if you never existed. This transformation happens so fast, so completely that it can be disorienting. You might question yourself. You might wonder if you did something wrong, if you're being too harsh, or if you're overthinking things. But you're not. You're simply seeing clearly for the first time. The relationship didn't end when you pulled away. It was already hollow. You just stopped pretending it wasn't. There's a psychological principle at work here that Machiavelli understood intuitively. People reveal their true nature not through their words, but through their reactions when conditions change. Anyone can be kind when it costs them nothing. Anyone can be supportive when supporting you also serves their interests. But the moment the dynamic shifts, the moment staying connected requires actual effort or loyalty, without immediate reward, the mask comes off. This is why withdrawal is such a powerful truth-revealing mechanism. It changes the conditions of the relationship without changing you. You're still the same person. You still have the same values, the same character, the same capacity for friendship. You've simply stopped performing, stopped overextending, stopped maintaining relationships that were never reciprocal to begin with. And in that shift, you create a space where people's true motivations become visible. True friends don't panic when you need space. They don't become resentful when you can't provide what you usually provide. They don't disappear when you're going through a difficult season and aren't as fun or helpful or available as usual. True friends understand that relationships have rhythms, that people need to focus on themselves sometimes, and that genuine connection doesn't require constant maintenance or validation. They trust the foundation of the relationship enough to let you have your distance without interpreting it as abandonment or rejection. Fake friends can't do this. Their connection to you was never about the foundation. It was about the facade, about the benefits, about what they were getting in the moment. So when the flow of benefits stops, they have no reason to stay. The friendship was always conditional, and the conditions are no longer being met. Their reaction isn't personal, really. It's just the natural consequence of a transaction ending. Machiavelli wrote something in The Prince that cuts through centuries and speaks directly to this experience. He said, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deception." But he also wrote, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. As long as you benefit them, they are yours entirely. They offer you their blood, their property, their lives, and their sons when the need for them is far away. But when need is upon you, they turn against you." These words sound harsh. They feel cynical. But are they wrong? Look at your own experience. Think about the people who were close to you during your high points, who surrounded you when you were succeeding, when you were happy, when you had things to offer. Where are they now if you're struggling? Where are they when you need support rather than offering it? Where are they when you stop being the entertainer, the helper, the giver, the solution to their boredom or loneliness or need for validation? Machiavelli wasn't condemning humanity with these observations. He was describing a pattern, warning those who would listen that most loyalty is circumstantial, that most friendships are arrangements that trust should be given carefully and tested regularly. He lived in a world where misplaced trust could cost you your life, where a friend could become an assassin overnight if the political winds shifted. The stakes we face today are different, but the psychology remains the same. People are motivated primarily by self-interest. This isn't evil. It's not even particularly remarkable. It's simply how humans are wired. We move toward what benefits us and away from what doesn't. We maintain relationships that serve us and let go of those that don't. The difference between genuine friends and fake ones isn't that genuine friends are somehow above self-interest. It's that genuine friends have internalized the relationship itself as part of their self-interest. Your well-being matters to them because you matter to them, not because of what you provide, but because of who you are. That's the distinction. That's what makes loyalty real. When you withdraw and the fake friends reveal themselves, you might feel a range of emotions. Anger at being used, sadness at realizing the friendship was never what you thought it was, loneliness as your social circle shrinks to only those who genuinely care. These feelings are valid, but they're also temporary. What comes after them is something more valuable than any false friendship could ever provide. Clarity. Clarity about who people actually are beneath their presentations. Clarity about what your relationships are really based on. Clarity about where to invest your energy and where to stop wasting it. This clarity is Machiavelli's gift to those willing to see. It's the dark wisdom that comes from understanding human nature without the comforting illusions that most people cling to. Yes, it means you'll be alone sometimes. Yes, it means your circle will get smaller. Yes, it means you'll lose people you thought would always be there. But what you lose are illusions, and what you gain is reality. You stop wasting years on people who were never truly with you. You stop pouring energy into relationships that were always one-sided. You stop performing for an audience that was only there for the show. And here's what Machiavelli understood that most people never grasp. Isolation isn't weakness. Isolation is where power begins. When you're no longer dependent on the approval, presence, or validation of others, when you're comfortable in your own company, when you've built a life that doesn't require a supporting cast to feel meaningful, you become untouchable. Not in an arrogant way, but in a peaceful one. You're no longer vulnerable to the manipulation that comes from needing people who don't genuinely care about you. The people who remain after your withdrawal are precious. They've passed a test they didn't know they were taking. They've demonstrated that their connection to you exists independent of what you do for them. These are the relationships worth investing in, worth protecting, worth reciprocating with the same genuine care they've shown you. These are the ones who saw you pull back and didn't interpret it as rejection but as self-preservation, who gave you space without disappearing, who checked on you without demanding explanation. Hold these people close. Not desperately, not with the clinging need that comes from scarcity, but with the quiet appreciation that comes from knowing their rarity. These are the ones who will be there when everything falls apart, not because they expect something in return, but because they care about the person beneath the performance. There's a scene that plays out in the aftermath of this withdrawal that's worth examining closely. You're going about your life focused on yourself, no longer making the effort to maintain relationships that weren't reciprocal. And then, sometimes weeks or months later, someone from that previous circle reaches out. The tone is usually casual, as if no time has passed, as if the distance never existed. They might send a meme, ask a question, or suggest getting together sometime. This is a fascinating moment because it reveals another layer of Machiavellian truth. People will test whether the door is still open. They'll check if you've softened, if you're available again, and if they can re-establish the dynamic that previously served them. How you respond to this moment matters. Because if you immediately welcome them back, if you act as if nothing happened, if you resume your previous role, you've taught them that your boundaries are negotiable, that they can disappear when you're not useful and return when they need something, with no consequences. Machiavelli would advise measured distance, polite perhaps but not warm, civil but not inviting. You can acknowledge the message without reopening the door. You can be cordial without being available. This isn't about punishment, it's about protection. It's about honoring the lesson you learned during your withdrawal about who this person actually is. Some people will notice this measured distance and disappear again, confirming that their reach out was just testing the waters, checking if their access had been restored. Others will persist, and their persistence might be genuine or it might be manipulation. The way to tell the difference is to observe over time. Do they continue to reach out consistently? Do they make efforts without demanding immediate reciprocation? Do they respect your boundaries while also expressing that they value you? Or do they cycle through charm and guilt, availability and distance, trying to find the approach that works? True friends will understand that rebuilding trust takes time. Fake friends will become frustrated that the old dynamic won't resume immediately. And in that patience or impatience, you have your answer. The longer you practice this withdrawal, the more you start to see patterns not just in others but in yourself. You begin to notice your own tendencies to overgive, to seek validation through usefulness, to maintain relationships past their expiration date because you're afraid of being alone. You recognize how much of your identity was built around being needed, being helpful, and being available. And you realize that some of what you perceived as betrayal was actually just the natural consequence of training people to treat you as a resource rather than a person. This isn't about blaming yourself for being used. The people who exploited your generosity are responsible for their own actions. But there's power in recognizing your part in the dynamic, in seeing where you compromised your own boundaries, where you accepted breadcrumbs and called it friendship, where you ignored red flags because you wanted to believe the best about people. Machiavelli wrote for princes, for leaders, for people in positions of power who needed to navigate complex social dynamics without being destroyed by them. But his principles apply to anyone who wants to see reality clearly, who's willing to face uncomfortable truths about human nature, who understands that genuine connection is rare and should be protected from those who would exploit it. The world will tell you that what we're discussing here is cynical, that it's paranoid, that it's the thinking of someone who's been hurt and is now closed off. The world will encourage you to be open, to trust, to give people second chances and third chances and infinite chances, to assume the best about everyone, to maintain relationships even when they're clearly one-sided, to keep performing because stopping feels like giving up on people. But the world is full of people who were destroyed by misplaced trust, who gave their energy to those who didn't deserve it, who were betrayed by those they believed in. The world is full of people who maintained fake friendships for years, decades even, only to realize in moments of crisis that those friends were never really there at all. Machiavelli offers an alternative. See people clearly from the beginning. Test loyalty not with questions, but with observation. Notice who stays when the benefits stop. Build your life on the foundation of those few genuine connections, rather than the crowd of convenient associations. Accept that most people are motivated by self-interest and don't take it personally. Protect yourself accordingly. This doesn't mean becoming cold or manipulative. It doesn't mean treating everyone with suspicion or refusing to open up to anyone. It means being strategic about where you invest your trust, being observant about how people actually behave versus what they claim, and being willing to let go of relationships that were never real to begin with. When you do this once, when you withdraw and watch how people respond, you gain information that most people never acquire. You see behind the masks. You understand the mechanics of social dynamics. You recognize the difference between performance and genuine care. And armed with that knowledge, you can make better decisions about who deserves your time, your energy, your loyalty. Some will call this dark, some will call it cynical. Machiavelli himself was called the devil's advocate, the teacher of evil, the man who destroyed morality by revealing how power actually works. But Machiavelli wasn't destroying morality. He was removing the veil of illusion that allows immoral people to exploit the naive. He was giving those who would listen the tools to protect themselves, to see manipulation before it succeeds, to distinguish between real and false loyalty. His wisdom is dark only in the sense that it illuminates shadows that most people prefer to ignore. It's an uncomfortable truth, reality, without the comforting stories we tell ourselves about human nature. But discomfort is the price of awareness, and awareness is the price of freedom. Because once you truly understand how most relationships operate, you're no longer trapped by them. You're no longer desperate for approval from people who don't genuinely care about you. You're no longer giving your energy to those who would drain it without reciprocation. You're no longer performing for an audience that was only ever watching for their own entertainment. You're free to be selective, to invest in depth rather than breadth, to build a smaller circle of genuine connections rather than a crowd of superficial ones. You're free to say no without guilt, to create boundaries without explanation, to walk away from what doesn't serve you without looking back. You're free to exist on your own terms, comfortable in solitude, secure in yourself, needing nothing from those who have nothing genuine to offer. This freedom is lonely at first. It feels like a loss. Your phone gets quieter, your social calendar empties out. The constant background noise of shallow friendships fades away, and in that silence you might panic. You might wonder if you've made a mistake, if you're being too harsh, if you should reach back out and rebuild what you walked away from. But sit in that silence long enough and something shifts. The panic subsides. The loneliness transforms into solitude and solitude into peace. You realize you're not missing what you thought you were missing. You're missing the idea of it, the comfort of familiar patterns, the security of being surrounded by people, even if those people weren't really there for you. What remains after the fake friends expose themselves and drift away is something solid, something real. A handful of people who matter, who showed up, who stayed. The relationships that survive your withdrawal are relationships worth having. They're built on foundations that can weather distance, silence, and changing circumstances. They're connections where both people value the other person, not just what that person provides. And yourself, you remain clearer than before, stronger than before, more certain about who you are and what you will and won't. Accept. You've learned to distinguish between loneliness and solitude, between isolation and independence, between being alone and being at peace with your own company. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in isolation, in exile, after losing everything he'd worked for. His political career was destroyed, his reputation was shattered, the people he'd served abandoned him. And in that isolation, stripped of position and power, and the crowd of false allies who surrounded him when he had those things, he wrote the most honest account of human nature ever produced. He wrote without illusion, without the need to make people comfortable, without concern for being liked. And 500 years later, his words still cut through the comfortable lies we tell ourselves about loyalty, friendship, and human motivation. 500 years later, the patterns he described still play out in every relationship, every social circle, every dynamic between people. Do this once. Withdraw the benefits. Stop performing. Stop trying. Stop being available in the way you've always been available. Not forever, not as a permanent state, but long enough to see who notices, who cares, who reaches out, not because they need something, but because they value you. long enough to watch the fake friends expose themselves through their absence, their resentment, and their inability to maintain the relationship without continuous reward. The truth you'll discover might be uncomfortable. You might find that more relationships than you expected were built on convenience rather than connection. You might realize that people you considered close friends were really just familiar strangers, orbiting your life for their own reasons, present but not really there. But this truth, uncomfortable as it is, will set you free. Free from the exhaustion of maintaining relationships that were never reciprocal. Free from the disappointment of discovering betrayal years down the line when you needed someone and they weren't there. Free from wasting your precious time and energy on people who never valued it. What you lose are illusions. What you gain is reality. And reality, clear and unvarnished, is where real connection becomes possible. Because once you know who people actually are, once the masks are off and the pretense is dropped, you can choose consciously. You can invest intentionally. You can build relationships on genuine foundations rather than convenient arrangements. When you stop performing, only the audience that truly cares remains. Everyone else was just passing time, filling space, using your light to see by until they found their own. Let them go. Not with bitterness, not with anger, but with understanding. They revealed their nature because you created the conditions that made revelation inevitable. Machiavelli gave you the principle. You applied it. The truth emerged. Now you know. Now you see. Now you understand what he understood 500 years ago, that genuine loyalty is rare, that most friendships are conditional, that people will stay as long as staying serves them, and leave the moment it doesn't. This knowledge doesn't make you cynical. It makes you clear. It makes you careful. It makes you wise. And in that wisdom, you'll find something most people never achieve: peace with being alone. Because being alone is infinitely better than being surrounded by those who were never really with you in the first place. The price of this peace is solitude. The gift of this solitude is authenticity. And authenticity, even when it stands alone, is worth more than all the fake friends in the world. Stay sharp. This is noir wisdom.